All right, let's do another example now. So here's example 2, saving money with a used car. So suppose that you're thinking about buying a car and I've narrowed down your choices to 2 options. So you're thinking about a new car option. The new car costs $25,000. It can be financed using the 4-year loan at 7.9%. And a used car, it's a 3-year-old model, so it's just a little bit used, not too old. It's $14,000, and you can have a 4-year loan at 8.45%. Again, it could vary from person to person, but usually used car loans tend to be a little higher than new loans. And I will say for right now, too, these values do seem pretty high. So if you're going car shopping, again, try to negotiate those percents, get them as low as you can. So what we're going to do is find the monthly payment for both and see kind of what's the better choice here. So what's the difference in monthly payments between financing the new car and financing the used car? So I'm going to do the new car first. All right, so first of all, actually, I'll write it right here. Let's just rewrite that formula. So the payment formula is P times R over N. 1 minus 1 plus R over N, the negative NT. All right, so for the new car, the P is 25,000. The R is 7.9%, and again, in decimal form, that's 0.079. Let's see, our N here is going to be 12 because we're paying it monthly. And our T is 4. So I'm going to plug all these values in here. So let's see. I have 25,000 times 0.079 over 12. And that's all over 1 minus 1 plus 0.079 over 12 to the negative, let's see, N is 4 and T is 4. I have it backwards here, and N is 12. All right, so let's do a little bit on the calculator this time. We'll kind of do it together. So what I would do is just clean this up a little bit. So for the numerator, I do that 0.079 divided by 12. I'm following PEMDAS here. I'm doing the parentheses first, and then I would multiply that by that 25,000. So for my numerator, I'm getting like 164.58333. So I'm just going to use a bunch of 3s here to be more accurate. And then in the denominator, so one thing I want to note before I go any further is that 4 times 12 is 48. So this is going to be negative 48. So for my denominator here, again, I'm going to start with the parentheses. So 0.079 divided by 12. I'm going to just leave it in my calculator, press the +1. So now I've done this piece. Now I'm going to raise it, use my up arrow, to the negative 48th power. Okay, so I get this value here. And now I'm going to take 1 minus that. So I'm going to do 1 minus 0.7298, 148,727. I'm using all those decimals, and that's my denominator. Okay. So again, if you find you make a lot of calculator mistakes, just take it little by little and kind of simplify some parts first before you try to do the whole thing at once. And when I divide these two, I should get about $609. So let's see. See, I'm already making mistakes. Let's see, 83 divided by 0.2701, 85127. And I get about $609.15 there if I round to 2 decimal places. Now your book just rounds to the nearest whole number and they use 609. So that's fine too. Here, I'll stay on track with the book, 609. Usually though, our loans do have decimal places. That's fine. All right, so for your old car, let's do a different, or the used car, I should say. It's not old, it's only 3 years old. Your purchase price is $14,000. Your rate is 8.45%, so 0.0845. Your N is still 12, and your T is still going to be for 4 here. So I'm looking at 14,000 times 0.0845 over 12. And then the denominator, 1 minus 1 plus 0.0845 over 12 to the negative It's gonna be the same here, right? Because it's 4 years still times 12, so you're still gonna get that negative 48 there. Now I'll save us some time here so you can do it on your calculator again, and I'll just use your book's rounding. So they rounded to about $345 using the nearest whole number. So that's quite a difference in price, right? So what's the difference in monthly payments between financing the new car and financing the used car? Well, difference means to subtract. So we're looking at 609 minus 345, and you end up here with $264. So if you're willing to purchase the used car, then you're going to save yourself $264 a month on that loan payment, right? So, and they're both for 4 years. So you will save money over time. Now, something to keep in mind when you have a used vehicle, though, it may need more maintenance quicker, right? So you're already 3 years in here, which is not that old of a car, but it may need more maintenance faster. So something to compare here, used versus newer cars, is your used cars may need more maintenance quicker, more repairs and things like that because they're older vehicles. But if you can get a car that's just slightly used, then it's still going to be probably in really good condition. I know my husband and I lucked out once, this was a few years ago. He was looking for a new truck for work, and trucks can be quite expensive. And we happened to find one that was last year's model, but it was, just over the new year. It was like February or actually, no, maybe it was later. It was a couple months into the new year. So most of the previous year models, I think, had been gone. There was like one left, and this was the only one left. And it had been like a showroom model, so it had a little bit of mileage on it, but not much. It just had been driven like by people as like company representatives, like kind of just around the block and for show and stuff like that. So it had less than like 1,000 miles on it, and we were able to save about 10 or 15,000 off the price because it was last year's model. And it was a few months into the next year, so nobody really wanted it anymore. So that was probably the best find I've ever got. But I researched for a while before we saw that car, and we realized like, hey, this is a really good deal. So we were able to get almost a brand new car, but we saved around 10,000 off the price of it because it was the previous year's model. It was a few months into the new year, so no one was really looking at it anymore. And we lucked out because the mileage was extremely low on it because it had never really been driven. So that was a nice deal for us. Not your typical used car, right? Because it was just a dealership car, but it worked out well. So keep your eye open, keep looking, do your research before you jump on any deals. Make sure it's a good car. Make sure you understand what you're getting into before you purchase a vehicle. Because I know I've had those vehicles too where I've purchased them and then the next week I'm putting repairs into it. So you want to really do your research there. All right, one last thing we're going to talk about here, and I've kind of been mentioning it, the money pit of car ownership. So there's a lot more to buying a car than just the price of the car, right? There you have to have the insurance to get started as well. If you have a loan, then you also have the interest that's going along with that loan. And then you also have things like operating costs. You have to pay for fuel, for maintenance. That can be things like oil changes, air filters, new brakes, tires. If you drive the car, you may have to pay tolls and parking fees. You may pay to have your car cleaned, or just if you clean it yourself, you're still paying money for paper towels and cleaners and things like that. You also have to include things like insurance or license fees, like fees for your own license, right? Registration fees. So you have to renew your registration every 2 years. There are taxes that you have to pay on vehicles. Excise tax usually comes in right around February from your city, interest on loans, and so on. So there's a lot of expenses that come in. I remember the first time I got the excise tax in the mail. It's usually around February from our city. I almost died because I wasn't expecting it. I had kind of forgotten that I bought a car the year before, my first car. And when the bill came in for, a few extra $100, it's a one-time fee, but it's based on the value of your car. So if your car doesn't have much value, then it's pretty cheap. But if you have a brand new car, it can be very expensive, like $500, $600, $700. So I remember the first time I bought a car, I didn't know it was coming in the mail, and it was a shock. So I've learned my lesson since then. And it comes every year. So if you own a vehicle, whether it's new or used or you've had it for a while, doesn't matter. It comes every year from your city. So just some things to keep in mind. So here you have a little chart. So the significant expense of owning and operating cars shown in this table here. According to the American Automobile Association, the average yearly cost of owning and operating a car is just under $9,000. So they kind of look at the cost per mileage and kind of average your cost per year for owning the vehicle. Obviously, your cost could change depending on who you are. This is just an average. But so if you own a small sedan, you're probably spending around $6,700 a year. A medium sedan around $8,700, minivan around $9,300, an SUV around almost $11,000, and a large sedan again almost $11,000. They're taking into account like your operating costs, the fuel costs, insurance, things like that. So just kind of giving an estimate there. Now, a large portion of a car's operating expense involves the cost of gasoline. So as the luster of big gas guzzlers becomes less appealing, many people are turning to more fuel-efficient hybrid vehicles that use a combination of gasoline and rechargeable batteries. So one thing you do have to think about too is sometimes hybrid vehicles cost more money on the purchase price. Hopefully that will be changing though, as they're becoming more and more popular. So as things become more popular, usually the price goes down on them. So that will be really great, both for people and for the environment. So gasoline right there is a huge expense, particularly if you're commuting far to work. So annual fuel expense can be calculated, annual means for the whole year, for your annual miles driven, divided by the miles per gallon that your car gets, and divided by the price per gallon. So different cars get different miles per gallon, and they will advertise that when you go and purchase them. They'll have the MPG, or the miles per gallon. Typically larger vehicles like SUVs, minivans, trucks get poor gas mileage, whereas smaller vehicles tend to get better gas mileage. Hybrids get better gas mileage, meaning that you get to go further on less gallons of gas, so you save money. Suppose that you drive 24,000 miles per year and gas averages $4 per gallon. What will you save in annual fuel expenses by owning a hybrid car that gets 50 miles per gallon rather than an SUV that averages 12 miles per gallon? Now, I would say 12 is pretty small. I do have an SUV myself. I do have 3 kids, and a dog and 2 cats. So we kind of needed a larger vehicle. And I think my car gets around 18 to 20 miles per gallon, which is still not great. So it's not as bad as the 12, but it's lower than other sedans and things like that. So there. All right, let me get my calculations out here. All right, so if we look at the hybrid vehicle, and I'm going to use this formula right here. So my annual fuel expense, so we're going to be driving 24,000 miles on average, and the hybrid gets 50 miles per gallon, and it costs about $4 per gallon. Again, this is an average. So when you multiply that all out, you end up getting 480 times 4, or $1,920. If you look at the SUV for the year, now we only get 12 miles per gallon on average. You're looking at 2,000 times 4, which is $8,000. So you're comparing 8,000 to 1,920. So you're looking at a difference of $6,080 potentially on gasoline alone in the year. So gas really does add up. And I know I've usually had long commutes with most, not all, but most of my jobs. So it is something that I think about too. Again, I do have an SUV more so for personal reasons with a larger family and things like that. But I also made sure when I was looking for an SUV to try to find one that had a little bit better mileage, miles per gallon. So like I said, mine gets more like in the 18 to 20 range, not as low as the 12 here. So for me, that was a good selling point as well. If you deposit your monthly fuel savings at the end of each month into an annuity that pays 7.3% compounded monthly, how much would you have at the end of the 6 years? So let's say you're going to have this car for 6 years, theoretically speaking. So the first thing is that if you're saving $6,080 per year, then I can divide it by 12 because it's 12 months in a year. And I'm going to round here, you get about $507. So what we're saying is instead of spending the money on the fuel, let's say you buy the hybrid. And again, we're kind of assuming that the other costs are around the same, or else it may not make sense, right? So let's say your loan payment would be about the same for the hybrid or the SUV, right? Because if the hybrid was significantly more expensive, then it wouldn't work out to be equal savings. But let's say everything else is about the same. So theoretically, you could have an extra $500 left over at the end of the month. And we're saying, well, let's actually invest that. Let's take that $500, pretend like we're still spending it, put it in an annuity and see what happens. Now, You do have to go back and remember your formula for your annuities from a couple sections ago, or a couple videos ago. So our formula for the annuity is this here. So I'm going to rewrite it for us. Okay. So in this case, my P is going to be the 507 that I'm going to invest, that we're going to save. And my rate is 7.3%, so 0.073. And again, N is going to be 12 because we're doing this monthly. Let's see, I have N is 12, and I'm going to do this for 6 years, minus 1. And then again, down here, I have 0.073 divided by 12. And again, you're going to go ahead and do this on your calculator. So start by simplifying first, right? This right here is going to give you 72. So do some little simplifications. Follow your order of operations. Do your parentheses first, then your exponent, then the subtraction, then the multiplication. On your denominator, that one's pretty straightforward. You're just doing your division. So I would clean up the numerator and denominator first separately, and then go ahead and divide. And what you're going to get is about $45,634. So that's pretty crazy, right? If you're saving, you're going from $6,080 a year. Now, if you just put that aside, let's say you just kind of kept it in a drawer or something like that. Well, that $6,080 over 6 years would still give you $36,480, right? So that's a lot of money there. But if we're investing it into a good account that has a pretty good interest rate of 7.3%, then you can even make more. So you're going to increase that amount by $9,000 by investing it. But even right here, think about this here. You're going to save $36,000 in gasoline. That's crazy. So you want to really think, I know I probably sound crazy just saying stuff like this to you guys, but think about these things. So I love this section of the text because it's stuff that we use every day. So when you go shopping, think about these things, right? So if you're debating between two cars and one of them gets better gas mileage than the other, and otherwise you love them both and they're both around the same price, then that could really save you some money, right? So if it gets significantly better gas mileage, I mean, 50 miles per gallon versus 12 is a huge difference. Most cars aren't going to be that different. But even if it's 10, right? So let's say it was just a difference of 10 miles per gallon, right? That could make a big difference for you and save you a little bit of money that's going to add up over time. So just think about these things. Do your research. Get the best rate that you can on those loans. Negotiate the costs. Do your research before you go in, so know what a good deal is, right? So if you want this certain kind of car, and do your research, see what other dealers are selling it for, see what used prices are going for, so that when you find that price and you're like, oh, I know that's a good price, then you can jump on it. Now you're negotiating your rate, right? So you want to really do your research first, and then really be willing to negotiate and think about the best deal that you can get for yourself, and also what do you really need, right? Do you really want that SUV, or would you rather have the hybrid and save the money, right? For me, I have a larger family, and we're always lugging stuff around and friends and things like that. So for right now in my life, I did really prefer having a larger vehicle. Now when the kids are older and they're gone and I'm not lugging them around all the time, then would I go back to a smaller car? Yeah, I probably would, right? And save myself the mileage, and just it's better for the environment too. So think about these things. I'll stop my rant now. But like I said, hopefully these chapters here, I really enjoy teaching them because I think they just make us better people and better consumers, and really can help us in our day-to-day lives. So hopefully you got some tips from this section too.